So, okay. So we're really excited to be here, talk about like this super exciting and innovative project. One of those things that really they don't tell you in school, that you're going to be hanging out with goats for a summer as part of your job. And so we're excited to be here. I'm also thrilled that Maia was keen to join me on this. We've had some incredible summer interns, and as you can see, Maia is here tonight and is still involved in the project. So the idea tonight is we'll tell you a bit about the sanctuary for those who haven't been able to be there yet, show you some goat photos and a bit of a video, and then kind of what we're seeing from the project. So just a bit, like Bill mentioned, we got another nature sanctuary. So just a bit about how we kind of steward our nature sanctuaries. So we're now at 10 nature sanctuaries, and I think it's about 515 acres-ish that we're responsible for stewarding forever. And so a lot of what we do is look at how do we manage our invasives at the property. And I wanted to bring this up because like we're focused on the Sheila Dunduli Nature Sanctuary, but generally we have a similar approach at all of our properties. So we work mostly mechanically. So this was like some high school students going above and beyond to get a buckthorn out of the ground. So, you know, the lion's share of our work is by hand, and our volunteers can attest to that and to how hard that is. Sometimes we do use chemicals when we have to, because there are some invasives that there's no point in managing them if you don't use chemicals, but that is very, very, very rare. And so then as we do the invasives removal, then a lot of times that opens up space to then add some native plants into the ground, which is partly what we're doing this Saturday. We've been able to create the space and get the native plants in there. So it's kind of the approach that we take across the board at our properties. So just kind of, and when we can, we focus in on little areas that Maia will talk about, and then branch out from those small areas at the properties. So here's the nature sanctuary, and it's in Aldershot. But like just like this is Highway 6, so it's it's kind of Hamilton Burlington border, and so we have a beautiful steep ravine, steepest ravine I think anywhere. Augusta, a lot of you know my dog, she needs her 4-wheel drive to go down the ravine and up the ravine. I go down on my butt and then I crawl up, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful forested ravine. And then in this area, a lot of it is nice upland meadow habitat, and it's in this habitat that we have more kind of scattered in invasives, but the lion's share of the property is a really neat diverse mix of upland dogwood shrub habitat and then beautiful forest. And we're still learning about the birds. One of Rob Porter's bioacoustic monitors is at the property, so we're learning more about them, but the word on the street is the diversity is pretty high with these two habitats. So that's kind of in a quick nutshell, that's the property. If you want to know more about the property, then you can come and visit us. And then I just wanted to show, so a lot of you are familiar with how we're a big partner in the Coutts Park Escarpment Eco Park system, which kind of this map shows the eco park system. But I wanted to show, so this is our property. And you can see, like, so it's right in the heart of the eco park system. It also, so pretend that this map was like this outline in yellow was dark green. So this shows how this is providing a really significant corridor, that north-south corridor. So between RBG lands and conservation Halton lands. And you can also look like this helps to make the link between Cootes Paradise and the Niagara Escarpment. So this is a really significant property that we were able to acquire thanks to the generosity of Sheila and Martin Dooley. So kind of a bit of the where it is on the landscape and the significance of it, and a bit about the property. But now we're going to get into, I know what everybody is looking forward to hearing about, our goats. And so these, I'm going to pass it on to Maia, who project intern extraordinaire, to talk about more about kind of basically her summer and what she did with the goats.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. So why we're looking at goats is because goats are being used more and more to manage invasive plants. So there's lots of research into how effective they are when they're in an area like on a site, but there's not really any research into the long-term effectiveness of them in the regrowth. So because we're lucky enough to have access to the goats through Wayne Terryberry, we can bring them back over multiple seasons and see that long-term impact, which is really exciting and an opportunity we have. For anybody curious, the goat on the slide is named Lynx, and he is like the boss goat. So then on the Sheila Dunn Dooley Sanctuary, if you can just go to the next slide, Jen. This project was made possible thanks to the many donors, including Cootes to Escarpment, Canada Summer Jobs, HFC, and countless individuals. And actually, in planning this project, the Hamilton Naturalist Club collaborated with students from Niagara College who actually developed a plan for invasive management. So in the report, the students surveyed the nature sanctuary, did a little bit of historical research, and then broke the sanctuary into areas of different levels of priority based on the number of invasive plants. And because of that, we were able to focus our efforts into areas where there was a lot of invasive plants compared to other areas. And then within these areas, we're comparing the effectiveness of human invasive management strategies, which is primarily mechanical, as Jen mentioned, with a little bit of chemical, to goats invasive managements. So overall, we're hoping to study the long-term effectiveness of this management through either goat gazing or mechanical techniques, in which is more effective. So the objectives of the project is, like I said, to determine whether mechanical or chemical or goat grazing is more effective in the long-term plan. But what's great about the Sheila Dunn Dooley Nature Sanctuary, also kind of unfortunate, is the number of invasives. There's a lot, which makes it ideal for doing this research project. But having goats on the sanctuary also offers a really unique draw for visitors and volunteers who can help manage invasive plants and visit goats. So as a project intern, my partner and I supervised the goats, trained the volunteers on girdling and manual removal of buckthorn, and we also collected dog strangling vine seed pods. And then we led visitor tours, which helped educate the public on the importance of managing invasive plants, and also shows the public on the multiple techniques the Hamilton Naturalist Club uses to manage invasive plants. Plus, visitors and volunteers were all able to interact and hang out with the goats, which really everybody loves. So the photo on the slide is an aerial photo of the nature sanctuary, and you can see it's broken into different sections. So the two main areas we were in this summer is the blue rectangle, which is a meadow dogwood thicket area, and then the red square is a woodlot, which is essentially all buckthorn, unfortunately. And then if we zoom in within the two main research areas, we broke it into 56 different 50 by 50 foot plots, and they were split between goat and human management, numbered G1 to 28 and people 1 to 28 respectively. And then control and monitoring plots were randomly selected for both people and goat plots, and are labeled C and M accordingly. And then plot management was prioritized based on the amount of invasives and how effective the goats were. Throughout the summer, we also employed a photo monitoring protocol. So to study the impacts of the plots over the long term, we used photomonitoring in both the control and monitoring plots. So in these plots, a 10 by 10 foot observation plot was developed. So within that observation plot, we analyzed the percent ground cover before and after each visit for the goats or humans in the monitoring plots, and then at the start and the end of the season in the control plots. And then we also did photos. So from the center of the plot, in each cardinal direction a picture was taken, we took a picture of the observation plot and then a picture that just like shows the whole plot, what's going on. And then this monitoring protocol will be followed in the following seasons. So you can see that long-term impact over the multi-years of the project and see how things change. So how goats manage invasive plants, there's two main strategies, which is eating and scratching. The goats eat the leaves, some smaller twigs of the plants, and then they'll also eat some of the bark, which is great. And they also eat the berries of buckthorn bushes, which is really fantastic because when the goats eat the buckthorn berries, they're no longer fertile, so they won't regrow after they pass through the goat's digestive systems, which is amazing. And then goats will also scratch between their horns, which gets really itchy. So on smaller like trunks, they'll scratch between their horns, which will peel off the bark and essentially girdles the plant, which is a great way to do it and just fun for the goats because they get to scratch. Really their ideal life. Humans, on the other hand, we did manual invasives. So we used extractigators to pull out smaller buckthorn. If anybody has used an extractigator, anything really bigger than 5 centimeters in diameter is just really hard to get out. And despite your best effort, it's just not coming out. So anything bigger than that, we girdled, and Sheila Dunduli actually discovered that linoleum cutters are fantastic for girdling plants. So if anybody needs to girdle something, linoleum cutters are the way to do it. And then we're going to show a quick clip of the goats in action. So James is the goat in the back, and you can see him girdling a bush, and then they'll also be snacking on the leaves, working hard, having a good time.
Okay.
If anybody followed us on Instagram, there's more videos there still posted. So if you want to see what happened, it's at SDD EcoGoats, and you can look at pictures and videos from over the summer. But just to summarize what the goats did. So we started the goats in the dogwood thicket area, but unfortunately, when given the choice between the native gray dogwood or the invasive buckthorn, the goats always chose the gray dogwood. So we moved them to the woodlot, which was primarily buckthorn. And when they didn't have a choice, they ate the buckthorn and it was great. So we spent most of the summer in the woodlot area. And what we have determined is that goats like plant leaves from about 15 centimeters, which is like ankle height, a little higher than that, to like 2 meters up, which is where they can reach on their back legs. And they'll like some leaves, but all other leaves are not really their style. So the goats will be what they consider to be done with the plot, and they'll be laying around, napping, having a good time. And we'll look at the plot and be like, oh, there's lots left. Like, why aren't they eating? But they're just not feeling it. So then we would move them to the next plot. They'll come back to it and sometimes eat more. And when goats were done with the plot, like I said, they napped more, but they also occasionally tried to eat plants on the other side of the fence, which was not ideal for us. And it actually led to one of the goats, James, who you saw in the video, getting temporarily fired because he was really excited to eat plants on the other side of the fence. But lucky for him, he was rehired because at the farm, every time we brought the van, he was the first goat at the gate, ready to go. So he came back and it was okay. We just followed him around the perimeter of the plot and he stayed in and it was great. And then people. So because my partner and I were on the property, whenever the goats were there, we were actually able to have regular volunteer and visitor hours when the goats were working. So we had lots of volunteers that came over the summer regularly, and we're really hoping they come back next summer. And we still have regular volunteers managing buckthorn throughout the fall, which is really great. But there's a difference in the way people and goats manage a plot, When goats manage a plot, they're like, this leaf right here looks fantastic, and that leaf over there also looks great, but none of the leaves in the middle, I don't want those. People, on the other hand, are very methodical in the way we go through plots. So we'll clear an area fully and then move on to the next area, which is great and which is really exciting because we're now, as Jen mentioned, planting at the property this Saturday. If anybody wants to come plant trees with us, it's going to be a fun day. So that's how people do it. And people at this point are looking like they're winning the race, much to our volunteers' enthusiasm because they're winning. But we'll see how things go in the next seasons. Back to you, Jen.
Okay, thanks, Maya. And yes, our volunteers love the fact that they're in a contest with the goats, and it's maybe not fair because the goats actually don't know that they're in a contest. So that's maybe not, so it's not really a fair, but yes, the volunteers like that they're winning. So here's just a bit of a summary from our summer. Ended up being mostly 3 goats that would come. Why 3 goats? 3 male goats fit in a cargo van. So that's why 3 goats. We were able to employ 2 interns for 16 weeks. We had a ton of volunteers out, as well as a number of visitors. Although visitors will tell you that they came to just visit, I still made them pull out a buckthorn while they were there. We had hundreds of dead buckthorn, too many to count. We are going to be planting 150 trees and shrubs just in the area that was people managed. There's a lot of time, and Maya can speak to this, moving fencing. So that's one of our recommendations for phase 2 or next year, is to have electric fencing that's a lot easier to move. Goats had their own Instagram page. I don't know that there is a picture of a person anywhere on this page, but there's great footage of the goats. So if you want to see more videos, it's on that. And then we've had some very generous support from donors to help out with this project, which means that we're, in not bad shape going into next year. We still need some support so that we can do everything that we need to do next year, including having our interns again. But we're in good shape to get going next year, which is unusual and exciting. So our recommendations this year, we started the project in May because that's just, we managed to get the 16 weeks of funding. We're suggesting that we wait until there's actually food for the goats to eat. So starting in early June after leaf out, we're suggesting that we move to electric fencing. Moving fencing is at least a 2-hour deal. Fencing is not meant to be moved through a forest. It's easier for the goats to escape, which is why James was fired temporarily. Whereas the electric fencing looks like way easier to set up. It could even be like one person set up, and faster. And then we're also suggesting a bit of an adaptation of our protocol. And, so we have the goats go into a plot, they eat till they're done, move on to the next plot. Well, for next year, we're suggesting that we cut down some of the branches so that the goats can eat more of the berries, because that could be when the goats start winning the contest, is by eating the berries, because our volunteers are pretty fantastic, but they are not going to eat buckthorn berries. So that's a bit of a change that we're going to try for next year. And then we're also going to provide more evening and weekend volunteer opportunities. We had lots, but we're going to maybe pump up more of the weekend for next year. And so how are we doing in the project? So overall, this project is a massive success. Because if you saw the objectives that Maya talked about earlier, it wasn't just number of dead buckthorn. We had a lot of people out helping to manage buckthorn. We had a lot of visitors, we had a lot of volunteers. We got, there are a lot of dead buckthorn. So if you come by, you'll see our buckthorn graveyard. It's tremendously, I think it's almost surpassed my expectations with how fantastic this project has gone, and has made us really, really excited about next year, when we can have even more people out. 'Cause remember, at the beginning of this, there were really, really tight restrictions still. So we're like that made us made it tough to really talk about the project too much, whereas next year we know we can have more people talk, like, out and visiting and seeing and helping out. And none of this would have happened, well, without our donors, but even more importantly, in a way, none of this would have happened without the goats. So the goats are the tool that has allowed all of this huge success for the project. And we mentioned it a couple of times, some upcoming events. So at the property, we have the planting this Saturday, and for any of these, for any of this stuff, if you're interested in coming out, then let me know and I'll pass on more details. We have a rubber boot walk. So we did this last year. It was fun. We go down the ravine. Yes, you need to go down on your butt and you crawl up, but it's fantastic while you're down there. So we just go down and we kind of walk up the creek banks, and see like that other part of the property that we can only peek down at when we're at the top. And so that's on November 6th. And then every Monday morning, we're still managing buckthorn, which I guess is also why it's maybe not super fair to the goats, because they're not there right now and we're still working away. But it's a great way to start the week if you're able to, and if you're interested, even if you just wanted to see what we're doing, then let me know, and you'd be welcome to join us. And then I wanted to put in a bit of a plug for a couple of other things at a couple of our other nature sanctuaries. So we're doing a tree planting at Cartwright. So that's actually close to Dundully in Dundas on November 11th. I know some people have Remembrance Day off. So if you'd like to recognize Remembrance Day by planting a tree, let me know. And we'd love to have some help. And then at the Creef Woods Nature Sanctuary, so this is the brand new nature sanctuary, we're looking at doing a bit of trail clearing on November 13th. So if you're interested in any of these things, then let me know, and I can get you some more details. And that was everything we wanted to share. And I guess these goats, because of course they all have great names. So this is JJ. JJ replaced James for a while. And then when James came back, JJ was gone. And this is Dean, who is just the quiet guy in the back that just kept trucking away, doing what he was supposed to do. So these were the goats.
Dean was our favorite goat.
And pardon?
Dean was our favorite goat.
Yeah, you're not supposed to have favorites, but he kind of was. And so yeah, that was kind of what we wanted to share with you guys from our first year of this project. And if there are, so it looks like there might be some questions. Okay, so I see there's stuff in the chat. So I was just going to check this, but I want to leave the goats up there. So maybe I'll do that so you can still see the goats, because they're kind of fun. Because I haven't had a chance to look at this.
There was a question in the Q&A that I can answer.
Okay, go for it.
Sheila asked why we stopped using female goats. And so we initially had female goats for the first week, but female goats are very herd-minded. And they will, when there's somebody on the outside of the fence, they want to know who's there, want to know what's going on, will follow in little herds and all stick together. Whereas the male goats don't really care what's going on the outside of the fence. They'll do their own thing. They're pretty chill. So because of that, the male goats were a little more focused on their work, which the female goats are a little cuter, I'm not going to lie, but they were just didn't work as efficiently as the males.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Have you had, you didn't mention autumn olive. Is there a problem with autumn olive in the sanctuary?
No, Bill. So generally where I see autumn olive actually is spooky in the clearings at Spooky. Especially like clearing 1 and clearing 2, for those of you who know our Spooky Hollow Nature Sanctuary. We don't, it's buckthorn. So in the forest where we spent most of the summer, it's like a buckthorn and dead ash, and sprouting ash. And other invasives at the property in the upland part of the property. There's some multiflora, what, it's escaping me. Buckthorn, multiflora, and DSV, dog strangling vine,
I see.
are kind of the 3 main ones in the upland.
Because autumn olive will eventually be a problem. I mean,
yeah, I haven't seen any.
I see it everywhere in Brant County that I go, and I can't imagine that. I mean, birds love it. I mean, birds love buckthorn. I mean, that's why buckthorn is such a problem, because birds love to eat it. And I noticed you mentioned the goats will eat the buckthorn berries, but the people won't. Well, the people would not be advised to eat buckthorn berries because they're an extreme cathartic. So unless people were really constipated, they would not want to eat buckthorn berries.
No, they wouldn't. But goats have pretty incredible guts. Like they can eat all this. They can eat multiflora. Like the some of the buckthorns actually have thorns. Like not all of them do, but some of them do. That is fine if they choose to eat it. It's just they don't always choose to eat what we want them to. They can eat poison ivy, and it's fine. Like it's incredible what they can do. Yeah.
While we're on the topic, somebody asked if the goats eat garlic mustard, and we did try, and they did eat garlic mustard. There was just not a lot in the area, but when handed a piece, they ate it, which was kind of surprising.
And they don't seem to be keen on dog strangling vine.
No.
They avoided it until I said, oh yeah, they're not going to eat that, and then they ate a bit of it just to prove me wrong. But it's not their choice, I guess. Yeah. Were there any other questions?
You can open the Q&A tab.
Oh.
Okay, I have a question. I'm reading a question from, this is from Sheila. Can you please explain why you stopped using female goats?
Yeah, and Maia answered that one.
Okay. What a question from Jeffrey Chan. Any articles, papers you can recommend that talk about the impacts of goats on different species of invasives? Are there any species they won't eat?
That's part of the issue is like you can read like lots of anecdotes and see like little video clips of people getting all excited like on the news or news coverage or whatever, that people are having goats out, and and they say the goats eat everything, but then there's no like, do they really eat everything? And because one pass through isn't going to kill what they're eating, right? The idea is they have to keep coming back to weaken the plants. So how often do they keep coming back? So part of the problem is there just isn't a lot of research around it. Our Niagara students found a bit, and we can share, if anybody's interested, we can share the report that they developed for us, but there's not, so we're hoping that they this can have an idea of what they do. And we know some of what they don't like. So they love gray dogwood, not so fond of honeysuckle, like it's, and the big leaf stuff. So if they had their choice, they'd go after like a basswood over a buckthorn.
Yeah.
Because they like the big green. Yeah. And then do the goats need to be monitored? Maia, maybe you can answer that one.
Yeah, so whenever the goats were in the plot, we were around, we have general observations of their behavior over the entire summer, but like we don't have like at 2:15 they stood up. It's just a general observations. So we were essentially monitoring the whole time. So that was our summer.
Okay, so that question was from Marcel Constable. I guess we answered the question from Susan McMillan about do the goats eat garlic mustard?
Yeah.
And how was it to camp?
Yeah. So Sheila is asking, Maia, please speak to how it was to camp on the property.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, what we did for the summer is, for most of the summer, we would pick up the goats Tuesday morning, and then the goats and myself and my partner would sleep over until Thursday, when we would go drop the goats off Thursday afternoon. So it was a fun time. The volunteers kindly made tent pads for us. So we had tent pads, and then the goats had a lovely shelter built. The unfortunate thing was it was corrugated metal, and the goats' horns are much wider than the goats realize, despite always having them. So in the middle of the night, they'd sometimes just like turn their head and it'd be like crash. You'd wake up and be like, oh, it was just a goat. Never mind. It's fine. It's fine. It was fun though. Yeah, the goats for the most part are a good time. And then in the morning, you'd be like, okay, time to go to work. And they'd all like wander over to the gate, ready to go, walk them to work. And then when it rained, the goats were like ready to go back and stay dry. They don't like getting wet.
I have a question. Was there any danger to the goats from coyotes?
No. We saw a singular coyote on like week 1, and that was it.
Would there be a danger? Would a coyote even attempt to attack a goat?
I would not think so. The male goats are quite large. On their hind legs, they're like well over my height, and I'm 5'10". So, and they've got massive horns. So like the goats can handle themselves. It'd be a very ballsy coyote to attack a goat.
Would the male goats defend the females, or was that something?
We never had males and females there at the same time.
I see.
So.
And they're separated at home too.
Yeah.
But another measure that we put in place, because we saw coyotes like every day leading up to the start of the project. And so at base camp, like we weren't too worried about during the day, like these aren't yoga goats. These are like 200-pound goats.
Yeah.
So, you know, so leading up to the project, we were kind of wondering, would the coyotes like come to check out what was going on? We have seen no signs of them since like May 3rd. But for base camp, we got donated like big construction fencing that's 8 or 9 feet high, maybe not that high, like solid fencing. So they'd be pretty safe when they're in their base camp. And then we'd all be around during the day. But also like even the females are probably 100 and something pounds.
Yeah.
With horns.
Yeah.
So we were never really worried. It was more just, would the coyotes come to check out what was going on?
Yeah. I noticed Jim Stollard had raised his hand. Jim, do you have a question?
Yes. I just wondered if Jennifer or Maia could tell us if there was any information about alternative creatures that might work better or as well. And of course, I'm thinking of sheep right off the bat. And you can even get more exotic, I guess. There is llamas and different imported wildlife. Do we have any info? I just commenting because I once visited a winery where they use sheep to control, what shall we say, trim their grapevines and control weeds. And it seems to be fairly effective. So, yes, any comment about alternative critters?
That's a good question, Jim. And it's not something we looked at. So, we were focused on goats because we had access to goats through Wayne Terryberry. So Wayne and I have been talking about having a goat project for years. We were just waiting for the right property to test drive it. So I'm like, all of the other critters that you mentioned, like I've kind of heard similar things that they are effective as well. But for our purposes, we were focused on goats because that's what we have access to, thanks to Wayne. So it wasn't looking at like which species might be better. It was more goat grazing versus people.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? It seems like we've exhausted. I had one question.
Mm-hmm.
Not really anything to do with the Dunduli sanctuary as it doesn't have any autumn olive at the moment, but do you have any feelings about autumn olive versus buckthorn in terms of which is worse, which is more of a threat to, do they like buckthorn seems to be an understory plant in a lot of forests, where I don't know if autumn olive is that type of plant. It might be more something that has to be sort of like gray dogwood out in the full sun.
Yeah, good question. And I haven't, so at this property, like we have some buckthorn, like multi-stem buckthorn where all the stems are like this. And yeah. I've never seen autumn olive like that. Where we have autumn olive is in the restoration field at Amalo. And I've been able to manage that just by girdling or sometimes cutting and painting. And then where for our sanctuaries, so which is kind of my experience with it, is mostly at Spooky. So for those who don't know Spooky, that's like Norfolk County. And yeah, most of them are in the clearings, but we have some that are in the conifer understory as well. They do seem to do better in the clearings. I have seen bigger buckthorn than and this is the first time that Dunduli Sanctuary has been managed. But in unmanaged areas, I've seen massive, like I don't see autumn olive forest. Now I could be wrong. That's just at our sanctuaries. I haven't come across it like that, but like we have buckthorn forest. Like you need a chainsaw. And I haven't needed to ask any of our chainsaw volunteers to take down an autumn olive. And they're both persistent, like both of them, you have to keep going back for management because they'll keep coming up again from the seed bank. So they're similar in that way. So my experience has been the buckthorn is worse, but others maybe where like in Brant County or Norfolk might have opposite experience.
Well, buckthorn can actually become a very large, it's like a small tree.
Yeah.
Where I think autumn olive just remains more of shrub size, I guess, kind of like gray dogwood remains kind of like gray dogwood gets maybe 12, 15 feet tall, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And like even gray dogwood, although it's native, there would certainly be times where you would want to thin gray dogwood, depending on the type of habitat you want to create. So if goats like gray dogwood, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Depending on the situation and the area that you're in. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we might have one more question. I see that's up to number 5.
Oh, I can look.
All right. Let me see. Will this presentation be made available later in case one wanted to share it? That's from Jeffrey Chan.
I'm going to say yes. I think so. I know it's being recorded.
Yeah, so it goes on YouTube, right? I think all these go on YouTube. So I would have to say that's a yes. Chris, can you corroborate that?
Yes,
Maybe-
Lou posted onto YouTube, and then we're eventually going to get them on the website.
Okay, so that seems to be the last question.
Okay.
So I thank the two of you for a very interesting presentation. I hope that encourages some of our listeners